Grammy, can you tell me about the day I was born?
Oh my, yes, I can. I'll never forget that. David called and said your mother was having labor pains and he was taking you to the hospital, which was too early, but it was, so he took her to the hospital, to the university hospital, and it's a good thing he did. And I was out with Louise. We were out at Edward's house playing cards, playing, I don't know what we were playing. We played canasta, I think. And it was about 11 o'clock at night when David called and said that she had gone into pretty severe labor and they were going to keep her. So Louise took me and we went to the hospital and we sat up there almost all night, and then about 5 o'clock in the morning, Louise said she was going to go home. She had to get some sleep because Nancy and Fred were there, and she'd better get some sleep before she had to get breakfast. So I stayed there, and about 6 o'clock or 6:30, I heard the nurses running, and I said, that baby's been born. And I stuck my head out the door and looked, and I saw one nurse say to the nurse who came out of the delivery room, she said, what did you get? And I heard the nurse say, it's a little one. And they rushed her right into the premature nursery, spatial nursery, and they said perhaps we could see her later. Of course, Louise had gone home, and I stayed, and I sat there and sat there and sat there till, oh, I don't know, it was way late in the morning. And finally they came and said, if I washed my hands up to my elbows, had to take my rings off, put on a gown, I could go into the nursery and see the baby. She didn't have a name then. And I went in, and they were giving her oxygen within the closed bassinet. She didn't have any clothes on. She didn't have a diaper on. They said they couldn't put a diaper on her because they had to watch. They put some pads under her to see if she was going to pee and move her bowels. And she couldn't cry. She squealed. She was too weak. They didn't want her to cry. They had tubes running all over, and I looked at her, and I don't think she opened her eyes at all. Don't remember that she did. She was such a little thing. And then the doctor who was taking care of her came around, and I said, well, do you have hopes she's going to live? And he said, we're going to do everything we can to keep her alive. It's going to be touch and go. They put a tube down her nose into her throat and gave her a tablespoonful of milk, I think it was. They had to be very careful how they watched it. And I didn't see her with her eyes open for several days. And I got so I would peck on the isolate a little bit, and I could tell she could hear, but I couldn't see whether she could see or not. But finally, after she was a little older, they started giving her a little more milk through the tube. But it was tough to go for a while. And then finally, but she took her milk that way. They said she was too little and too weak to suck on a bottle. She couldn't do that. And they fed her through a tube in her nose. And then finally, after I don't know how many days, she started gaining a little bit of weight. And I don't know, I can't remember when they gave her a bath. They couldn't give her a bath for a good while. But then she started gaining weight. And the doctor said, well, does she have a name? And I said, yes, she's got a name. David had already named her Beth Ann. So they put Beth Ann Willis. I said, put it in her isolate so she'll know she is somebody. And they did. And when I got to town that week, I bought her a little dress. I never will forget it. So I thought, well, if she dies, they'll have a dress to put on her. And I bought a pair of blue baby boxing gloves, and I took them back out there, and I told the nurse to sterilize them and put them inside the isolate. And she did. And when the doctor came by, he said, oh, did you want a little boy? I said, no, I didn't want a little boy, but I want her to know she's a fighter. And then I went every day after work, and I'd peck on the isolate, and she started squinting her little eyes, and I could tell she had pretty eyes, and I kept saying her name over and over and over and over. And her mother was scared to death of her. All she did was stand there and cry.